be helpful if we take off the mics, off the mute. So, hey, welcome everyone to my first live stream this week. And actually, it's not the first since the pandemic hit and changed our lives. I'd like to say forever, but hopefully for the positive. Hopefully, we're coming out of this. This has almost become old school at this point. But the Chinese symbol for crisis is the same as opportunity. And as an entrepreneur and someone who sort of thrives in crisis, if you saw my TED Talk, if you read my books, always looking for kind of the silver lining. So hopefully we're going to find some today. And I want to welcome Lena Graves, who's Chief Culture Officer and the founder of Culture Connects, which is a conference that's scheduled, hopefully, scheduled, it's not hopefully, it is scheduled for October, and hopefully we'll be on the other side of this, or as I say, the flip side of this, and that'll be a fun time. So welcome, Lena.
Thank you, Ara. So excited to be here today. Definitely different times. Funny enough, when we planned on having this live cast, the conversation was completely different. And it seems like the conversations are different, not even by the day, but by the minute. So kudos to everyone who's working so extremely hard out there to keep business running as much as we can. Obviously, the healthcare workers who are working nonstop, just trying to keep on going. And also the HR professionals. I had a call with a bunch of HR professionals this morning who are trying to learn new laws and new things that they have to learn overnight by the minute. And they're stressed out, but they're still staying strong for their employees. So kudos to all those people for sure.
No, absolutely. And to everybody who's listening, whether it's live or on the replay, I know a lot of people have a lot of other things that they're doing. They get kids and there's other meetings and they're still trying to work at home, which is a whole new way of life, which is what we're going to be talking about today, because we're really talking about the company culture in the era of work from home. And so that's our focus. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'm trying to monitor. So if you see me look away, I'm not checking my emails and I'm not bored with what the conversation is. I've literally got 3 monitors. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So I'm constantly checking, to see if anybody has any questions or anything. So hopefully if you do, I will be able to get to them. If not, we're always, the both of us are always on LinkedIn. So post your questions to the feed. We'll definitely get back to you about that, because this is for many people, this is the first time they've ever worked from home. So this is a whole new opportunity, but a whole new experience. It's a new way for companies to be able to operate. And there's a lot going on, but before we get too deep in this, we certainly want to send our well wishes to everybody, and hope everybody who's listening is healthy. Each of us probably knows somebody who has been impacted somewhat. Again, unfortunately, the first case, we live in a really small community in Northeast Pennsylvania. We're just sort of south of the Poconos, north of Lehigh Valley, and but the first case and the first death in Pennsylvania came from here.
Wow.
Don't know the family, but it was related to the family in New Jersey, that they lost the parent and the mother and 2 siblings, and wow. He was the 4th. So crazy stuff. So it happens. It's happening in our backyard. It's going to be more of that, but certainly quite disruptive. But there's a lot of good things. I don't know. I want to hear from you, Lena. How you've been spending your time. I mean, I don't have kids at home, so I don't have to worry about that. It's just my wife and I, we have family that's nearby, and we're sort of trying to keep our distance as much as we can
right.
with them. But I've been, today in the last 3 hours, right before this, I've been on 3 webinars. Mm-hmm. One of them was about, again, one of them is looking what strategy looks like, opportunity, and on the positive side, everybody does believe that the future, that this is what somebody calls a soft trend. This is an event. It certainly doesn't feel soft, but the reality is there will be an end to this. There isn't. It's a pandemic. it's disruptive. The positive effects and the ill effects will go on for a while, but this event will end, and I hate saying it's going back to normal because it's going to be a different normal or a new normal or whatever new term we can come up with. But we will get back to a way of life, and all of a sudden we'll gradually get into it. We'll accommodate the change. Some of us are going to adapt better than others. But it's going to go back to life when we can socialize and not have this physical distance. But a lot's going to be different on the reverse side. So I've listened to that. You and I know have been engaged with Jason Averbook, and he's got a great community now of work. He changed it from the future of work to the now of work. So I just got off that, and then there was another call that I was on with a few colleagues. Before we dive into this, I just want to make sure that everybody knows this. I have two communities. I have Googleization Nation, and that's free. It's a community, and I've got this. I started a Slack channel for anybody who's on Slack. You can go up to it. Both of these are free. You notice I called it "See You on the Flip Side," because there will be a flip side. We will come out of this. Absolutely. And so we want to talk about what the future of work's going to be. And Googleization Nation is just updates about more live streams like this, podcasts, updates. I'm going to be planning a few webinars, maybe even a small mini conference that we'll be hosting on it. So if you want to get updates in that, and again, this is part of Share. I'm going to borrow this. I won't say stole it. Together is Better is from Simon Sinek, who many people know, from the TED Talks and everything. But it's a great phrase, so I give him credit for that. That's not me, and it's not only joining me; it's joining literally hundreds. I think we're approaching 1,000 people on Googleization Nation, and I just started Slack over the weekend, and we already got a couple dozen. So
awesome.
Please join it and spread the word. And again, together is better, and together we'll figure it out. And the other thing is, before I get there, is and my book. Although it's titled "Recruiting in the Googleization," in the Age of Googleization, the first 130 pages have absolutely zero to do with recruiting. It's about the world we live in. It's about volatility, uncertainty, and complexity and ambiguity, called VUCA. It's about how education is going to be disrupted, right? Lena and I were just talking about that right before we went on, and next week her kids technically go back. You can't see my fingers because I got this covered, but technically go back to school. What's that going to look like? And some schools are not prepared to have virtual digital learning experiences. We talked about that. So I don't want to say I foresaw it coming, but all of a sudden we hit the tipping point, and the age of Googleization is upon us pretty quickly. My message to that is you can order the book for free, join.googleizationnation.com. You just pay for shipping, but you can get it for free, and hopefully we'll go up and take advantage of that. And we're going to be talking a lot about Lena's conference. This is the conference, October 21, 23. I've got a banner somewhere. Let me see where that is. See how many things we can get going here. So there's the website. You can go up and learn a little bit more. I'm grateful I'll be speaking at it. The topic's probably going to change a little bit from the initial plans, as everybody's is, but we'll be talking about. So you can go to cultureconnects.com. I'll bring that up in a little bit again, and so you can see that. And the headliner, although that I'm speaking there, where did I put the other banner there? There we go.
Hey.
Johnny Taylor from SHRM, president of SHRM. I'm sure he'll have a lot to talk about when it comes down to that. And again, so hopefully we'll be seeing each other face to face.
That's the plan.
Digital. Yeah, not only digital, but however it is, we'll get there. So let's get back to let's go back a little bit of background. You were planning this event for quite a while. I know I met you face to face.
Yes.
Seems like ages ago. It was just like 6 weeks ago at a conference that I was speaking at, and we connected online a little bit before that. But tell us a little bit about what you do and how we got here, and then we'll move into what company culture is being reshaped.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely. Starting with the Together is Better tagline, I think this is such an important time to be having that conversation because we have the idea or the mentality that to be together, we physically have to be together. And clearly, today's what's happened over the past week and a half, 2 weeks, is teaching us how to be together when we can't physically be present with one another. This is just one of the many examples of what's happening doing this live cast. I know you've been doing this for a little while, but there are ways to do it. I think we just kind of been trapped in this, the old saying, this is how we've always done it, and this is the only way we can adjust. And it isn't until something so drastic like this happens that you said, oh, shoot, I need to learn to do this, and I need to learn to do it overnight. And I'm impressed by the number of people who are just jumping right on and keeping things on moving and staying together, quote unquote, while we're having to stay apart from one another. So I just wanted to start with that because that's just an amazing feeling. I lead the HR community for the Maryland Multi-Housing HR Council, and we have weekly calls that started obviously as a result of all of this. And everybody's like, we're going crazy, but we're making things happen. So together is definitely better. The Culture Connects conference, I'll just tell you a little bit about that. I'm an HR professional.
Nice.
By background, I'm an HR geek for sure. I can do all things charm and HRCI related, and I can recite those books from front to back and back to front and however we want to. With that being said, it's important to learn all the employment laws and all of those things in order to be a successful HR professional. But what I'm really passionate about is workplace culture. And the reason for that is it's simple. At the end of the day, when you have good culture, those things become easier to manage. The legal side of things and all of those things become easier to manage. So I'm a culture geek above anything else. And more importantly, I'm super passionate about the people experience at work. Obviously, I don't have to say the cliche that we've all heard, we spend more hours at work, and we do. But at the end of the day, people enjoyment at work make a big difference in how the company operates. And it's not let's make sure that people are engaged in terms of, what they do day in and day out, but really, how do they feel mentally and emotionally? How do they feel about their place of employment, not while they're there, but more importantly, when they leave? Like, how are people feeling when they leave their place of work? And that's when you bring the culture that you're trying to achieve. When people leave work and say, you know what, I'm ready to get back in there tomorrow and do it all over again. And they go home and they have positive things to say. And I'm not saying that you have to go home and talk about work and the rest of the time that you're with your family. But if you truly are finding enjoyment in your place of employment, then the feeling and the mental health that comes aside with it, is hugely impactful. So I think that culture is definitely the number one thing that is going to drive the success of the organization. And I think we are in the time where it's very easy right now with everything that's going on at this point in time. It's very easy to say, forget, we don't have time to think about culture right now. Let's just think about putting out all these fires that we have. I keep driving that with my employer that I work full-time at Hirschfeld, as well as with Culture Connects. This is the time where we need to make sure that the culture of the organizations are solid, because this is the time where people are so stressed out. They're trying to figure it out, how to work at home, how to take care of their children, how to homeschool their children, because now there is, additional requirements to do all of these things. And we still have to be productive, and we still have to do all these other things. So culture comes really into play right here, right now, where as leaders, we really need to step up our game and make sure that on top of all the other fires we have to put out, culture is staying at the top of our minds.
For sure. So let's take a step back, because again, we I think people are going to go back and I use this phrase that there's going to be this all clear signal, and I think that all clear signal is going to be really well. I think the response to that all clear signal is going to be is not going to be what a lot of people expect. So even if they're right in 2 weeks by Easter, this is going to be clear. I'm not sure many of us agree with that. Or it takes 6 months. Whatever it is, when employees are called back to go to work and say, listen, we're reopening the doors. We'll be here Monday at 7 a.m. I think companies need to start looking at what that feels like. People are going to walk through the door. There's going to be a lot of socializing. It's not going to be back to work as normal. Productivity is going to be off. There's going to be people who don't show up. We'll get into all this stuff. But so whatever the company culture was last week, when everybody went home, or left work, is going to be different than it is when they come back. And a lot of company cultures were already fragile. There were a lot of company cultures that there was a culture, but it wasn't necessarily a good culture or a positive culture or a warm culture. It might have been a corporate culture.
Right.
I'm a little worried about some of those. But let's just step back, because we keep throwing out company culture. Everybody has a different definition for it.
Absolutely.
How do you define company culture? Because I think that's going to be important in saying, how does that transfer into a digital world or whatever, or a Googleization world or a work from home world? How does company, well, that'll be the second question, but how do you define company culture?
I definitely say, and I said this multiple times in some of my live LinkedIn feeds, company culture needs to be a way in how people feel. And this is what I always say. Let's stop talking about the monthly parties and the potlucks and all of these other things. Company culture is a way that people feel, the habits and how they communicate, their behavior and how they treat each other in the workplace. And so the reason why, we define it and we want to make sure that people understand that is because what happens with culture is, unlike other things that we do, such as, let's say, marketing or sales or other departments, accounting and finance and all of those things, you can put a spreadsheet together and you can put the check marks on, I did this, I did that. What happens with company culture is you can't put a spreadsheet together and say, okay, from January 1st through March 31st, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and then boom, there is culture. Culture is definitely that ongoing change in behavior, those habits that we developed in the way that we communicate with people, and also what we find acceptable, right? Because we often have pockets of the organization who have quote unquote good culture because their managers are leading culture. But then as a company, we often then decide that if you have somebody who is a great producer, for example, and I'm just throwing random examples out there, well, you know what? This person is producing a lot for the company, so we're just going to allow this person to be a bit of a jerk and treat everybody else not as nice as we expect everybody else to be treating their employees. And so then that's when you're smashing culture, right? That's when those...
Well, that becomes your culture. I mean, when you tolerate that, that becomes your culture.
Yeah. And that's when those habits and those behaviors they're not going to be appreciated by their employees because they realize that it's selective. I call that selective culture. And there isn't such thing because that becomes the culture of your organization. And those who are working hard at communicating how you expect people to communicate and building those habits and those behaviors often get turned down by the fact that there are going to be individuals that those types of behaviors are acceptable. So it needs to be a universal thing. While it definitely starts with leadership, it needs to be a whole organization who is on board with whatever is it that you determine the culture of your organization is going to be. Culture is definitely not the core values that you put in a pretty bulletin board out in the front of the lobby as people enter, but then behind the scenes, you're doing something completely different. It really, I always describe it as a feeling. And I always go back, I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek, of course. And I always describe it back to one of those videos where he shared, when did you fall in love with your wife? I'm sure that you've probably seen that one. Do you know exactly what day that happened? And the truth is that most of us do not have the answer to that question because it's not the fact that my husband bought me flowers one day on our anniversary or something of that nature. It's an ongoing behavior and things that we do on a regular and consistent basis that creates for those feelings to become that person to be emotionally attached to the organization that they support beyond the paycheck. So when the person stops saying, well, how much more can I make if I go to this other employer? If they say, you know what, I was in a situation like that with an employer, I had no interest. I received calls from headhunters and all of that. I had no interest in going anywhere else. And I had no interest in even hearing what the number was. And that's when you know that emotional attachment has become the most important part of it. And that's how I relate culture. And that's how I define it, because I do certainly believe that it's a feeling that people get in how they emotionally attach themselves to their employer as a whole in the company, and their peers, their supervisors, there are people that report to them, right. Every single individual in the organization. So definitely I describe it as a feeling of care, compassion, and of course, my favorite word is kindness. When you feel like you're cared for, when you feel like the company is driving kindness and is driving the way that you treat each other from top to bottom and from bottom to top, however you want to paint that picture, if everybody feels comfortable and feel cared for, I think that's when you bring that excellence and culture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I just want to let everybody know, if you see me typing and looking away and doing things, I'm trying to monitor. I've got 3 monitors. I've got my laptop open. I got my phone open, looking for people who are commenting things, or just what I was just doing right now was, I'm going to put this up here across the banner. You talked about kindness. There it goes. You'll see in the bottom, there's a kindquiz.com/GGG. Are you familiar with the Kind Quiz? Did I introduce that to you?
Yeah, you did. And I had a call. Her name skips me right now, but I know you know.
Erin Mendelson.
Yes, I had a call with Erin a few weeks ago. And I took the kind, it was spot on. And definitely, we're actually having conversations about how we can incorporate her business with the conference. So hopefully that's something that we can make happen.
Yeah. It's a great fit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic fit what she does. But I definitely encourage everybody to go on the kindquiz.com, and you would be surprised in how spot on the information is that you received. And of course, anything that you want to do from there is totally worth it. I'm looking forward to that potential partnership with the conference.
What was your profile? Do you remember?
It was compassionate. That was the outcome. I don't have all the words in front of me, but it came as compassionate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, by the way, if you go to the kindquiz.com and do /GGG, which is Geeks Geezers Googleization, that's their podcast. Actually what's Summery, SUMMERY, which is the name of her company. But what they do is they take everybody who completes it from this algorithm, from that URL, and they will donate. They make a donation on the behalf of everybody who completed it, all our listeners. And they've made 2 donations already. One was to a pet shelter because it came out that we were all empathy. I think our number one group, our aggregate value was empathy, and our interest was animals. And there was another one that was made to an education nonprofit.
Love it.
So there's an algorithm that looks at it, and it takes all the information, all the data that's in there. And then it automatically identifies an organization that would be best suited to the values of our company, or in this way, it's not our company. So yeah, it's fun. So a little bit of technology, empathy and technology working together. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I share with Erin when I talked to her that one of the things that I was trying to do as part of the conference is trying to understand the climate of the culture for the people that are coming to the conference, meaning not them individually, but the organization as a whole. So one of the things that we're exploring is doing a pre-conference culture climate check, which I thought would be excellent. So if we go in and, we meaning our leaders of organizations have this mentality of this is what our culture is. And then when you actually check the climate of the culture, sometimes it is what they think it is. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's not as great as they thought it was. So I thought that doing that cultural climate check, and then bring those people to the conference to say, hey, here's where you think you were, here's where you really are, right, one way or another, and here's where you want to be, and here's how we can help you get there, and develop this roadmap. So that's one of the conversations I was having with Aaron about how we can potentially work together to get those right, temperature checks out with organizations. Super excited about that.
Yeah, and again, there's no right or wrong. This is like a lot of other profiles. This isn't a test. It says it's a quiz, and it truly is, but it basically helps you identify what your values are collectively, and it could be empathy or compassion or kindness, and there's a whole variety. There's 10. I believe that there's 10 different values that they measure, and again, there's no right or wrong one. It doesn't mean you're a good or a bad person, but it does. By a company being able to do this, it helps them identify what collectively is driving the behaviors of all their employees, or their majority, the aggregate of their employees, and then what are some common interests that they have. Mm-hmm. So rather than saying, hey, we're giving a donation on behalf, or we're going to sponsor this event on behalf, and we expect everybody to come, and nobody cares about a 5-mile run. Right. That the real interest is in children or poverty, or whatever that might be. So again, you're from the beginning, I was interested in the conference, in company culture. You've been much deeper in it, but I've been working on it and talking about it. I don't do a lot of OD work, so I don't do a lot of work in there. But every person that we help hire, when we do a screening, I always look at it from, everybody looked at it. Can they do the job? We need somebody who has a degree. Are they going to show up every day? Are they smart enough? Are they good team players? And some of that starts to get involved with culture. But ultimately, I always look at them, and it's like, this person could be a great salesperson, but they're not going to make it when your company. You're too cutthroat. Correct. You're too cutthroat. Or you're talking about team play, but that's not what your compensation plan is. Correct. It doesn't fit. So I've always looked at culture as an important part, but the value of company culture is going to be so much greater now, because I truly believe, and I started to talk about this at the beginning of the show, whatever that all clear signal is, and I don't think it's not going to be universal by any means. It's going to be different in different locations and for different people. Whatever that means is, I don't think everybody's going back to work. I think, it's my belief that a lot of people were saying, listen, you told me I was not allowed to work from home before, but all of a sudden for 3 or 4 months, I can do it.
I've been able to.
Right. And, I got everything done that I was supposed to. I don't feel like commuting an hour or 2 hours each way. I get to have more time with my family. And that's going to affect company culture, because the companies that are adapting to this and thinking about not only, hey, how can we get through the next 4, 6, 8 weeks, but how do what happens on the flip side? What happens on the other side of this? It's going to be really important. And there already are people. I can't tell you how many people in the last week, in fact, it happened twice yesterday. People said, hey, I need to update you who the new administrator is on the assessment portal. And I said, I hope, everything's okay. We wish you well. Are you healthy? No, I accepted another position.
Wow.
So there are people that are taking this opportunity to hire people. I don't know what that culture was like, but there were quite a few people. She said, oh, by the way, take these people off because they're also leaving. And I said, wow. Are you having a layoff? And she said, no, everybody found new jobs. So good talent are taking this opportunity to work for companies that have a good culture. And it's sort of the buzzword that I think surrounds culture these days is employee experience. So they have a good employee experience. So let's flip over here a little bit. We're about 30 minutes into this. We don't keep it around 45 or so, and you and I can talk all day about this.
That's right. Yeah. We can keep everybody on forever.
Let's talk about again, just because you're working, all your employees are working from home does not mean you don't have a company culture. This is a sure test of the vulnerability or the success of your company culture. What are some things that you're seeing companies do proactively to maintain that company culture, or evolve that company culture, or have or create a company culture, now that this is the interface that we have? It's Zoom, or this we're on StreamYard right now, but whatever it is, what are you seeing companies do to take opportunity to reinforce or build up their company culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that above anything else, what I want to remind everybody else of is communication is going to be key during this time, right? Let's don't send our workforce to go work from home and forget they exist because we're so busy and caught up on everything that's going on today, and we're just kind of letting people figure things out on their own. Let's remind ourselves that most of those people who are suddenly having to go home and work remotely have never done that before. So they are adjusting. I've been working remotely for the past 10 years of my career. So to me, the only thing that's changed is that I'm not getting on an airplane every other week to go somewhere. I'm just doing it 100% from home. So that wasn't too difficult for me. But what's happened is, for those individuals who this is new, and not only do they have to learn how to work remotely, but they also have to learn how to do it while dealing with other issues, while dealing with their children being at home and all of this other stuff. So it's critically important that communication becomes the number one thing that you do the best. Some of the things that we're doing, and some of the things that some of the people that I've talked to, I started actually utilizing this app. Is called TextLine. And it's a way in which we can send messages to our employees to check in on them. It's not a two-way, well, it could be a two-way message if you want it to be, but I'm utilizing as an outbound where we're sending our employees information about what's going on with the company, which is important. We need to let people know what's going on. People are scared. People are worried that they're going to lose their jobs. So we need to stay in touch with them, communicating this is what the company is doing to keep you safe, to keep you healthy, to keep our customers safe and healthy, and also to continue to ensure business continuity to any extent that we're able to. So communication is a critical part of it. But then on the flip side of that, the other thing that I'm utilizing this app for, or some of the things that people are doing, is sending positive messages, just staying in touch with people, not just for the here is what the company is doing, blah, 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 and feeding information, but checking in with people and say, how are you doing? We realize this is not the normal for you. Are you hanging in there? Because people are stressed out, and we have to remember that people are not only stressed out because of what's going on in their particular environment, they're stressed out because they just don't know what's going to happen. Right. And that's a scary thing to be facing. So as leaders, we need to make sure that our communication encompasses everything, not just what we have as an agenda for the company and how to keep the company running, but also we need to incorporate in that agenda, how are our people feeling? And are we being compassionate? Are we sending messages to people, not only our employees, but also outside of our employees, and just checking in with people? Really, really important to stay in communication. For those individuals who are new to remote work, make sure they understand how it works. People sometimes feel embarrassed about asking a question and how to connect this one thing to this other thing to make sure that I have the two monitors working properly. People feel uncomfortable asking those questions because they don't want anybody to think that they don't know how to do something that might feel like it should be simple. So from even something as simple as how to get your laptop connected to your other monitor and all of those things, check in on people, because people are stressing about so many other things, that anything that we can do to facilitate to them and create, again, that environment where it's safe. It's safe not to know how to put these things together. It's okay to reach out and ask a million questions because this is a completely new environment for you. I mean, people have asked me questions such as, when are they allowed to take a break, to go care for their children and stuff like that, because they just don't know. And so we need to make sure that people understand what this new quote unquote temporary normal is, because we are, we are expecting people to continue to perform and to continue to do all the things that they would normally do in the office, but we realize that it's a different time and that is not going to be that quote unquote normal at this point in time. So communication at the top of everything else. I just think we need to make sure that we're communicated, and we also need to make sure that we're being compassionate in the way that we communicate, because people are not only worried about their jobs, they're worried about their children, their family, their parents, their grandparents, if somebody's going to get sick, what's going to happen to them. There is a million different things that are going on through people's minds right now. I need groceries. Am I safe if I go outside? When do I do it? Is it okay if I go out for a run? So we need to just constantly be providing people with tips on what things are going on so that they know that we are making sure that they're okay, not only from a business perspective, but also as people.
Right, and it becomes many employers are there's so much confusion out there, and there's so much, you turn on the news and you hear this conflicting. So employers have an opportunity to be that safe place that people can, it's the blanket. I mean, it's the blankie, literally, that they can go there, or it's a safe place that they can go to ask questions or to get help. And that's, partly, I mean, I would say most of the days I'm 90% positive, and then, when I listen to the news, it sort of shatters that immediately.
Yeah.
But I've been so productive and so busy, and again, I mean, looking into the future, and sometimes the future's next week, and sometimes it's a year from now. But it's literally, there's so many good things happening by so many people that we just don't hear because it gets drowned out by all the bad news.
Correct.
And that's a challenge. So you mentioned the tool. What was the tool you were using? Did you say?
It's called Text Line, and you can basically send announcements. It could be, it comes as a text message to the employees, and then you can also put attachments to it. If you have a memo that you want to distribute to people, you could do that. I actually send memos and send important information, but I also send funny memes. Just to get people smiling again. You can send pictures.
So there's so many things, And again, I know a lot of people are using Slack, just a kind of reminder. This is sort of what I did, because I work with a lot of consultants, a lot of small business people, a lot of people that are just kind of hanging out there because their employers aren't doing it. So one of the things that I wanted to do is just be able to reach a lot of other people. And, Slack, there's this free version of Slack. It's easy to use, but if you're not comfortable with some of the apps and things, then there's a little bit of learning curve, but there's a lot of people that can help you get started. If you just want to get some emails and get updates. I mean, one of the articles I was working on, which you can get through Googleization Nation, or just connect with me on any of the social media. I titled it, and it may change by the time it gets out there. I didn't have a chance to get it up before our stream today, but it's called 5 Tips to Thrive During the Work at Home Experiment. Sort of this was, hey, let's have an experiment. I mean, if somebody came up with this idea, this crazy idea, let's send everybody home and see if they can connect to us at work. If somebody said, we're going to shut down business this week, and on Monday morning at 8 a.m., we're going live digitally. Let's see how it works. Nobody would have ever in their wildest dream. And that's exactly what companies did. So as you were saying, there's so many things. So by the way, and I'll give a preview of this, and this will be posted up there. But the first thing is create a workspace. Find a workspace that everybody knows this is your office, because the hardest thing about working from home, and again, so we're talking about company culture, but the hardest thing for people at home, working from home, is, my husband and I and the kids are all working off the kitchen table. Well, right. Even if it's this little space, the end of the table, that's your office. Mm-hmm. That literally, you're not home working, you're working at home. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference. And Absolutely. It was literally have a space. So I've seen some really creative things. People had crates set up. I've seen an ironing board, you know, where that's their office, and it's like
Yeah.
no one can touch that. That's my office. Don't mess with
That's
the
my space.
papers. Don't move the stapler. That's my space. So people have to do that, but they're so basic. It's so common. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so much common sense. You know, that said boundaries, and again, you'll be able to get this, but I also had to create a work from home culture. And
Yeah,
companies are
absolutely.
going to have to be able to do that. So this will be out on, you know, this will be up there on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, or you know, if you subscribe to Googlization Nation, you'll get a copy of that. So a lot of different ways, and then I'll have it posted in the Slack channel as well. But there's a lot of other people who have really, really, really good resources. The other thing I've just found over the weekend, somebody thought they'd have about 20 people on this call. His name's Shelly Palmer. I'll be posting that too. He's a great guy. He's sort of the Consumer Reports of, I would call him that, of for anybody who remembers Consumer Reports of I don't even know if it's still around. Okay, but the Consumer Reports of like technology for common sense stuff, where things are headed.
Right.
And he had a call on Sunday, which was a working from home, and he went through a checklist of all the different technologies you can use.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, even everybody's saving everything on their laptop now. When you go back to work, where are all your files going to be?
Yeah.
You know, we had all these cyber security things. Oh yeah, you're going to just bring your thumb drive in from home that your kids were using.
Correct.
I mean, there's a million things that we sort of let the guidelines go down, but nobody thought about that. So he has a lot of software that's going to help, and that'll be in my second day. But it was really simple. You know, I'm pretty tech savvy. I'm not the most in the world, but I'm pretty tech savvy, especially for an older baby boomer. You know, live and die on this. I realized that, and we had a little incident just a couple of minutes ago, that the video stream, I have 1 gig of broadband coming into the house. So I should never, ever have have anything go wrong. But we're doing a podcast, or I'm doing this, and my video goes off on the podcast, and they go, hey, we lost Ira. We can't hear Ira anymore. It shouldn't happen. Well, I realized that the cable I was using, and this may not mean anything to anybody, the cable I was using was a Cat5 cable. Because it was around, and I just plugged my old computer into the new computer. You know, I have a brand new computer. I have a gaming computer. I don't game, but I just wanted all the horsepower in the world for video. So I put that in, but I never upgraded the cable, and realized that I've got a cable that was used like during dial-up times. You know, so there's all these little things. So I learn about that. I send it out to everybody. That's company culture. Now I only have 2 other employees, but for a large company, this is really helpful. I love your ideas. Like, hey, we don't know how to set a monitor up to this. We don't know how to log into the VPN because you told us that we weren't allowed to work from home, so I never did. I don't know how to send an attachment. These are little things that a company can do for free, or there's a lot of really good online training programs for it, e-learning programs out there. Now's the time to invest in help. So what's another tip? I know we're going to watch the time here, but what's something else that you can offer?
I think that from an education perspective, as it relates to your home, I think it's important that you also educate your family on what's going on, right? You know, we're running around like crazy trying to figure out how to do all these different things. I realize some children might be too young to understand, but when the kids are old enough to understand, educate them what it means that you are suddenly going to be working from home. My kids don't know any different. There will be nobody knocking on that door while I'm here working, but that's because I have, over time, I've educated my children that this is my workspace and these are my work hours. And when I'm working, unless something urgent is happening, there is no interruptions, right? So I think that providing tips to our employees and how to educate their families, you know, about this is not the time where people are asking you if you could drive them to here or there, or if you could do this or that. You are actually physically working as if you were in the office. So I think educating your families during this time. And one of the things that I also wanted to say, because you mentioned this earlier, and I think it's important, in addition to all of the things that we need to be doing, it is important that we stay informed in terms of what is going on and through the news or social media or however you receive the information. But it is critically important that it doesn't become everything that we do all day. because it's very easy to get caught up into the negativity and the arguments and the political debates about who's right and who's wrong. And suddenly you're arguing about something that you cannot control. So I encourage you to stay informed through whatever venue, social media or news or however you normally stay informed, but don't let that become everything that you do all day, because then it just consumes you. And as a Floridian, it's funny because we keep talking about how in Florida, we're very used to this kind of stuff happening, because suddenly we need supplies, the hurricane's coming, and we got so much time to prepare for it. And so what happens is during hurricanes, some people choose to sit in front of their TV and watch the Weather Channel all day. And that stresses you out, and you end up being scared, and you're not well prepared, and all of those other things. So like I said, I'm not telling you to turn it completely off, because we have to stay informed, but make sure that you only absorb that in the appropriate amount that is important for you and your family, to keep everybody safe, without that becoming everything that you're doing every day, because then you end up disconnected completely from work,
Right.
and in a panic mode that all of these other things are happening, because you're receiving information from so many different sources at the time that it's hard for you to kind of process it and be able to understand it. So I think that's another good tip that people need to understand, that it's important to stay informed, but don't let that become what consumes your life.
Yeah, and the concern, and the other concern is, because now you're not only the parent and the breadwinner, but you're also the teacher.
Mhm.
But there's so many good resources. I don't have young kids at home. I don't have any kids at home anymore. But I knew that was an impact, and I started to see a lot of resources come across of how to continue to educate the kids at home. And so, yeah, they're going to be online, but they're also, I think, and I don't live you live in Florida, but I got an email. I don't know why I got it, but I got an email from the Boca Raton Museum of Art, and they started these online classes for kids, for students, like tours and talking about art, as well as seniors. So there may be seniors
Right.
that are, what can you do to not keep them entertained, but also to I guess it's edutainment, yeah, to educate them as well. You talked about small kids. How do you explain this to them? Well, there's a video out. There's a really, really good video out. It's a cartoon, and it explains in a non-scary way what a pandemic is.
Yeah.
So there's a million resources out there. I put them out. They've been shared. I keep adding to it. There's so much creativity going on. This is what an employer. This is something that can send out for free, and it means a lot to companies, because just because your employees are working from home and they have kids, just go, oh, we're going to give you an allowance. Who cares if they have a child care allowance? It doesn't. It really doesn't matter, because they're trying to juggle all these balls, and they may have elderly parents, or they may have sick parents, or they may have somebody sick. So there's a lot of things that can be done. So I am so excited, Lena, that we connected. I was excited about the conference before, but I am thrilled. I mean, I think this is going to be a major event. I'm so excited to hear what everybody's going to be talking about 6 months from now. Hopefully, for 7 months from now, I guess. So hopefully it'll be. Hopefully that extra month will give us a window of time. Sure. But I think it's going to be so important. Coming out the other side of this, companies are starting to get the importance of employee experience, company culture, whatever you want to call it. I think for anyone who wants to have a thriving, growing business, to attract the best people, recruitment's going to go on the upswing. Again, I mean, the skill shortage didn't go away.
It's going to be short.
Just as in 2008, there was a lot of people that lost jobs that never recovered. Now, I feel sorry for a lot of them, but a lot of them just never retooled. They never reskilled. They didn't learn what needed. So there's going to be some people out of work, but a lot of people out of work really don't have the skills to go to do what they're going to have to do now. So everybody's going to have to upskill. It's a great time for employers to help their people doing that. That's going to go a tremendous long way, a long way. But again, As I said, I don't know if I'm just living in oblivious world, and because I don't watch CNN and NBC. I do watch them, by the way. I probably do watch them for an hour or 2 hours a day, when I'm riding my bike, or when I'm, where I check in every now and then, but I don't do it during the day. It's the same repeat stuff over
Correct.
and over
Yeah.
again.
We're still, right?
So I do catch up, but there's so many. I just have been more productive in the last 2 weeks, and probably
Same.
more positive than I've been despite all this. And there's an opportunity for everybody to be there, and that's sort of what my closing message is, and the opportunity there.
I like to add, I know we always run over the time, but I like to add a couple of things to that. One way that because people struggle to stay positive during times like this, right? It's hard. It's all that you're hearing is bad news, bad news, bad news. So it's hard to stay positive. And one thing that works for me, and I don't know that it works for everybody, but anytime there is a crisis, I go on, how can I help other people mode? And for me, what it does, it creates that positive and that sort of obligation of, I need to be there for others, because at the end of the day, I could complain about my kids being home. I could complain about all this stuff that's going on. I could complain about now I can't leave, or whatever the case might be. But at the end of the day, how can I look at my situation and compare it to the situation of those people who actually don't have the opportunity to work from home, perhaps, and they're fully out of work, and now they don't have income to pay their bills and take care of their families. So anytime there is a crisis, my natural mindset goes into, how can I help others? And what happens is that brings so much positivity, because I instantly start to recognize how lucky and blessed I am, despite the particular situation that might be going on. And I can promise you that all of us, if we start looking at how we might be able to help others, we'll find the positive things, and we start changing that negative mentality and attitude towards something positive, because you realize that even during the most difficult time that you might be facing, you still have something that you can give to others. And that's an important thing. And with that, the last thing I said is, I think you read it on my recent post, we changed our mindset with the conference. The conference has always been called Conference with a Purpose, because we're trying to help some individuals, but we are also looking at partnering with some sponsors for the conference to help the small business, any amount that we're able to help small business rebuild after this is all said and done. 100% of the profits for this event are going to go to help other people. So now more than ever, please join this event. It's going to be not only so meaningful, because we're going to be talking about everything that's happened this year and about culture, but we're also going to be doing a lot of work to be able to help smaller companies that in return are going to be able to get their employees back to work. So I'm super excited about that. And that's that whole crisis mode. How can I help other people? And I woke up in the middle of the night one day over the weekend, and I said, that's it. We any proceeds that we can, anything that we have for the conference, we're going to help some of the small businesses rebuild. So yes, and super excited to have you there, Tuaira. Super excited to.
I'm excited to be part, and again, just be part of that. So a couple things is, you can see, I didn't want to black you out, but I wanted to let people know where they can go, and you can see on culture.com, and you learn more about it. Just register, and opportunities to sponsor, to be involved, and connect with Lena. Let me get that off for a second. And you'll also, I want to close with this. I just picked this up 2 hours ago. I was listening, and I want to give credit to Daniel Burrus. There's a couple people I follow on a regular basis. I quoted Daniel in my book. And he's a futurist and pretty practical, very practical guy. He said, his mention was, he sees company culture, he sees our culture, not company culture, but our culture moving from success to being measured by success to being measured by significance.
Amen. I love that.
So I got to give him credit. I wish I could steal that tagline, just
That's
like
awesome.
I did Simon Sinek's "Together is Better."
Yeah.
But success to significance, that's the movement. That's going to be what drives companies and their cultures. And again, I think there's so many people like yourself, and there's so much good going on. And it just gets buried in some of the just bad news. Again, I want to remind everybody, I'm going to put this up one more time there. If you want to learn more information about the Culture Conference, Culture Connects 2020, go to cultureconnects.com. You'll be able to see this in the replay, obviously. How else can people get a hold of you, Lena?
They can reach me at lena@cultureconnects.com or info@cultureconnects.com, or obviously go on the company website, as you just said, cultureconnects.com, and send an email through there. And then, of course, message on LinkedIn, and they can reach me by phone too, which is also listed on the website.
Perfect. And again, just want to remind everybody one more time, if you want to have other conversations like this, get more involved, if you'd like to have a live stream together, if you have something to talk about and share, happy to do it. Go to googlizationnation.com. This is free. This is more from an email standpoint if you want to communicate more live in the 21st century like we do. Slack. So you can go to bit.ly/see-you on the flip side, because we do believe there will be a flip side to this. And finally, don't forget the word of my book. Again, talking about a little bit about the world that we live in now, what I was predicting a little bit before, but also what talent acquisition is going to look at. But even if you're not in talent acquisition, hopefully you'll pick the book up. And when I say pick it up, you can get it for free at join.googlizationnation.com. Make sure you put the join dot in front of it. You can order it. You'll get a hard copy. You'll get a digital copy right away, and you'll get the hard copy in 5 to 7 days of that. And the first 130 pages has nothing to do with recruiting. It's about exponential change, which we're living in right now. Hey, Lena, appreciate it. Stay well, stay healthy. Can't wait to see you in person again in hopefully a couple months, if not sooner. And for everybody else, please, keep your distance. It's not social distance, but keep your physical distance.
Correct.
Be smart. Do what you need to do. We will get beyond this. The pandemic will go by, and we will be back. And I won't say back to normal, but we will be back and thriving in a new world.
We would have learned a bunch of stuff, and as crazy as it seems right now, we are all going to be grateful for something that we learned during this time. So just always keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Hey, have a great day, everybody. Goodbye, Lena.
Thank you. Bye-bye.